This is Ron Howard's first Oscar. He filmed A Beautiful Mind chronologically, which is a rare occurrence in filmmaking.
At 20 years old, Ron Howard stood in front of his bathroom mirror and watched clumps of his own hair fall into the sink. He was the star of the #1 television show in America. 50 million people tuned in every week to watch him smile. And behind that smile, his body was falling apart from a level of anxiety he could not even name. And that was just the beginning of what Hollywood had in store for him. Most people only know the version of Ron Howard that smiles on camera. They have no idea what it cost him. The nightmare of Ron's life. Most people know Ron Howard as the lovable kid from The Andy Griffith Show.
The Andy Griffith Show, starring Andy Griffith, with Ronnie Howard.
Or the wholesome teenager from Happy Days. But there is a side to his story that almost nobody talks about. In the mid-1970s, Happy Days was the biggest show on television. Ron played Richie Cunningham, the nice, ordinary kid from Milwaukee. The show debuted in January 1974, and within 2 years, it was pulling in roughly 50 million viewers every single week. Ron Howard was one of the most recognized faces in America. But something was happening behind the scenes that threatened to destroy everything he had built. Henry Winkler's character, Arthur the Fonzarelli, was becoming more popular than the lead of the show. The audience went wild every time Fonzie walked on screen. The network executives at ABC noticed. They began discussing a plan to rename the entire series Fonzie's Happy Days. For Ron Howard, who had spent his entire childhood working toward this moment, the idea was devastating. He did not talk about it. He did not see a therapist. He did not tell his friends or his family how badly this was eating him alive. Instead, his body started sending the signals his mouth refused to send. Painful eczema rashes broke out across his skin, with the worst of it spreading across his eyelids. And then, the hair started falling out. Not gradually, not in the normal way that runs in families. It came out in alarming clumps, as he later wrote in his memoir. He was 20 years old, and losing his hair because the stress of being overshadowed on his own show was more than his body could handle. Ron later reflected on this period with brutal honesty. He admitted that he kept everything bottled up inside and probably should have seen a psychotherapist. Instead, he internalized every emotion, every fear, every humiliation of watching another actor steal the spotlight that was supposed to be his. The famous Ron Howard baseball cap that he wears in almost every photograph and every behind-the-scenes clip for the rest of his life was not just a fashion choice. It was a shield. It started as a way to hide the damage that Hollywood pressure had done to a young man who was too proud to ask for help. Creator Gary Marshall ultimately refused to rename the show without Howard's permission, and Ron threatened to walk after season 2 over the title dispute. But the damage was already done. His body had already paid the price. Every time he looked in the mirror, every time he ran his hand through what was left of his hair, he was reminded that success in this business comes with a cost that nobody warns you about. The ratings were through the roof. The money was good. And he was falling apart. What made it worse was the loneliness of the experience. Ron was surrounded by people every day on set. He had a cast that genuinely cared about each other. He had a creator in Gary Marshall who treated him with respect. But the anxiety was something he carried entirely by himself because he did not know how to ask for help. He grew up in a family where you handled your problems quietly, and you showed up the next day ready to work. That work ethic saved his career many times over the years. But in this moment, it was also the thing that kept him from getting the support he desperately needed. He knew, even then, that if he was going to survive this industry, he needed to find a completely different path forward. But the path he chose would first require him to walk away from everything that made him famous, and almost no one believed he could pull it off. To understand what Happy Days did to Ron Howard, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. The boy who was never allowed to be a boy. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma.
March 1st, 1954, award-winning actor, producer, and director Ron Howard was born.
His father, Rance Howard, was serving in the Air Force and dreaming of becoming an actor. His mother, Jean Spiegel Howard, shared that same dream. They were two small-town kids with big ambitions and almost no money. The family moved to California, and Rance immediately zeroed in on the fact that Hollywood always needed child actors. Ron made his very first screen appearance at just 18 months old in a film called Frontier Woman. Before he could read, before he could write his own name, he was already performing. At age 6, Ron landed the role that would define his childhood and follow him for the rest of his life. He was cast as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, which premiered on October 3, 1960. Producer Sheldon Leonard had seen the boy in a failed television pilot and was so impressed that he reportedly said he was not about to let him get away. Ron appeared in 243 of the show's 249 episodes across all 8 seasons, from the time he was 6 until he was 14. But fame at that age is not a gift, it is a weight. Ron experienced relentless teasing at school. His classmates mocked him constantly, assuming he was either a wimpy, sheltered kid or a show-off who thought he was better than everyone else. His parents insisted he attend public school in Burbank, despite the bullying. They believed normalcy mattered more than comfort. There was also a social tightness to his upbringing that Ron later said made him feel humiliated at times. His parents kept an extremely firm grip on his schedule, his friendships, and his exposure to the world. He was only allowed to work on The Griffith Show and maybe one other project during the off-season. While other kids were riding bikes and getting into harmless trouble, Ron was memorizing scripts and taking direction from adults 3 and 4 times his age. Ron later came to understand that this strict approach was rooted in love and fear. His parents had seen what happened to child actors who were given too much freedom and too much money. They watched other families in the industry fall apart. They were determined that their boys would not become cautionary tales. And yet, in the moment, a young Ron Howard could not always see the wisdom in it. He just felt different. He felt trapped between 2 worlds, not fully belonging to either one. His father, Rance, made one contribution to the Andy Griffith Show that changed everything, even though almost nobody knew about it at the time. The original scripts had written Opie as a wisecracking, sarcastic sitcom kid, the kind of character that was common on television in those days. Rance pulled the producers aside and suggested that the relationship between Andy and Opie should mirror the real relationship between Rance and Ron. He said the boy should genuinely respect and love his father, not trade punchlines with him. Andy Griffith loved the idea. That single suggestion transformed the emotional core of the entire series. But the real test of Ron Howard's childhood was yet to come, because when The Griffith Show ended in 1968, he was 14 years old and facing the most dangerous transition in all of entertainment. He was a former child star trying to become a real actor, and history was not on his side. After the stress of Happy Days nearly broke him physically, Ron Howard made a decision that everyone around him thought was insane. Walking away from 50 million viewers, Ron wanted to become a director. Not someday, not eventually. He wanted to start immediately. The problem was that nobody in Hollywood took him seriously. He was Opie. He was Richie Cunningham. Studios gave him what he later described as patronizing pats on the head and told him to come back in 10 or 15 years. They could not see past the characters he had played. To them, he was a television actor, and television actors did not become serious filmmakers. Ron turned to the one person in Hollywood who gave outsiders a chance. His name was Roger Corman.
Hello, this is Roger Corman, and I'm in the Criterion closet.
The legendary low-budget producer who had launched the careers of Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Peter Bogdanovich, and James Cameron. Corman offered Ron a deal that was pure business and zero sentimentality. He told Ron to star in a car chase movie called Eat My Dust. If it made money, Ron could direct. Eat My Dust grossed over $5 million on a budget of $300,000. Corman kept his word. He handed Ron a title that had tested well with audiences and told him to build a movie around it. The title was Grand Theft Auto. Ron and his father Rance co-wrote the script in about a month. The film was shot in just 15 days on a budget of $602,000. Ron nearly got fired on the very first day of production. He was so nervous and so inexperienced that he managed to complete only 4 or 5 camera setups before lunch. At that pace, the film would have taken months to finish on a 15-day schedule. Cinematographer Gary Graver pulled him aside and essentially taught him how to move faster. Ron later said that Graver saved his career that day. Grand Theft Auto grossed over $15 million. It was a genuine hit, and it was the last time Ron Howard would ever direct and star in a movie at the same time. He had found his true calling, but Hollywood was about to make him earn every single inch of credibility. He left Happy Days after season 7 in 1980. A BC had refused to let him take on more production responsibilities. An executive later compared losing him to those old legends about an eagle swooping down and snatching a baby from the cradle. The show limped along for 4 more seasons without him, but the magic was gone. Meanwhile, Ron Howard was about to begin the most remarkable second act in Hollywood history. The only question was whether the industry that had known him since he was a toddler would ever see him as anything more than a child star who got lucky. Building an empire and watching it crack. Ron Howard's directing career started with small films and built momentum through sheer persistence. Night Shift in 1982 introduced a wild, scene-stealing performance by Michael Keaton. Splash in 1984 grossed $69 million, launched Tom Hanks into stardom, and introduced Ron to the man who would become his most important professional relationship for the next 4 decades, producer Brian Grazer. Together, Howard and Grazer founded Imagine Entertainment in 1985. Their partnership would go on to produce some of the most successful and acclaimed films and television shows in Hollywood history. Apollo 13 in 1995 earned 9 Academy Award nominations and cemented Ron's reputation as a director who could handle massive, complex stories. Then came A Beautiful Mind in 2001, and everything changed. A Beautiful Mind won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Ron Howard, the kid from The Andy Griffith Show, the teenager who lost his hair from stress on Happy Days, the young man who had been laughed out of studio offices, was now an Oscar-winning filmmaker. It should have been a pure moment of triumph. It was not. During the awards campaign, a coordinated smear effort targeted the film. Critics and rival campaigns revealed that the real John Nash, whose life the film depicted, had a history of anti-Semitic remarks and bisexual relationships that the movie had not addressed. The attacks were designed to derail the film's Oscar chances. Ron Howard said the campaign made him really angry, and he felt the accusations were being weaponized in bad faith. The film won anyway, but the experience left a mark. Hollywood could build you up and try to tear you down in the same breath. What followed the Oscar triumph was a stretch of career highs mixed with devastating lows. The Da Vinci Code in 2006 grossed an astonishing $758 million worldwide, but critics savaged it with a 26% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and organized religious groups staged protests at theaters. Ron found himself at the center of a global controversy over a movie that was making enormous amounts of money, but earning almost no respect. Then came a brutal stretch that would have broken most directors. The Dilemma in 2011 earned a 24% approval rating. Rush in 2013 was critically praised, but earned only $26 million domestically. In the Heart of the Sea in 2015 opened to what one industry reporter called a measly $11 million on a $100 million budget. And Inferno in 2016 collapsed with a 20% Rotten Tomatoes score and just $34 million domestically. 4 expensive films in a row that either bombed financially or were rejected by critics or both. For a director who had just won an Oscar a few years earlier, this was a humbling free fall, and it was about to get worse. The projects that nearly ended his reputation. In 2017, Lucasfilm made a desperate phone call to Ron Howard. They had just fired directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller from Solo, a Star Wars story, over what the studio called creative differences. The film was already deep into production. Lucasfilm needed someone who could step in, take control, and deliver a finished product on a brutal timeline. Ron said yes. He inherited a production in chaos. He ended up reshooting approximately 70% of the entire film, which ballooned the budget to an estimated $275 million. When Solo was released in May 2018, it grossed $393 million worldwide. For any other franchise, that would have been a solid performance. For Star Wars, it was a disaster. Solo became the first Star Wars film in history to be considered a box office bomb. Ron was honest about the experience in later interviews. He admitted in 2025 that there was nothing personal in that film whatsoever. He had been brought in as a hired gun to fix someone else's problems, and the result reflected that disconnect. It was a paycheck job for a filmmaker who had always prided himself on choosing projects that meant something to him.
Well, as we wrap up production, I just want to take this moment to thank an incredibly talented cast.
But the lowest critical point of his career came 2 years later with Hillbilly Elegy in 2020. Based on the best-selling memoir by J.D. Vance, the film was supposed to be an awards season contender. Instead, it earned a devastating 24% score on Rotten Tomatoes and received 3 Golden Raspberry nominations, including one for Worst Director. Critics called it poverty porn and accused Howard of reducing complex Appalachian struggles to simplistic bootstrapping narratives. Glenn Close received both an Oscar nomination and a Razzie nomination for the same performance, making her only the 3rd actor in history to achieve that unusual distinction. The story took an even stranger turn in 2024 when J.D. Vance became the Republican nominee for vice president. Howard publicly said he was very surprised and disappointed by Vance's political evolution. The film he had made about the man's life suddenly became a political flashpoint, and Howard found himself caught between his art and the unexpected political trajectory of its subject. By this point in his career, Ron Howard had experienced the full spectrum of what Hollywood can do to a person. He had been America's sweetheart as a child, a stressed-out young man losing his hair on a sitcom set, an Oscar-winning director standing on top of the world, and a filmmaker watching his reputation take hit after hit from bombs and bad reviews. Most people would have started thinking about retirement. Ron Howard started thinking about something else entirely. The deepest wounds in Ron Howard's life have nothing to do with box office numbers or critical reviews. They come from the people he lost. Burying the people who built him. His mother, Jean Spiegel Howard, died on September 2, 2000, at the age of 73. She had spent most of her adult life putting her own acting career on hold to raise Ron and his younger brother Clint. In her later years, she made a quiet comeback, appearing in small roles in several of Ron's films. Her most memorable moment came during the casting of Apollo 13 in 1995. She auditioned for the role of astronaut Jim Lovell's mother, and midway through the reading, she pulled out her false teeth and asked the casting directors if that would help. She got the part. Jean's death hit Ron hard. His film How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which was released just months after she passed, carried a dedication to her memory. She was someone who loved Christmas the most. The tribute read, "Her death came at one of the most creatively intense periods of Ron's life. He was about to begin work on A Beautiful Mind, the film that would win him the Oscar. His mother never got to see it." His father, Rance Howard, died on November 25, 2017, at the age of 89. Rance had already endured an incredibly painful final chapter. His second wife, Judy O'Sullivan, whom he had married in 2001 after Jean's death, had died of Alzheimer's disease in January of that same year. Rance buried his wife and then died himself just 10 months later. Ron announced his father's passing with a tribute that captured who Rance really was. He called him a Depression-era farm boy whose passion for acting changed the course of our family history. Ron and Clint co-wrote a detailed farewell published in Variety, where they described how Rance had shaped the very foundation of their careers. Rance was the one who had suggested that the Opie character should genuinely love and respect his father. He was the one who co-wrote the script for Grand Theft Auto. He was the one who insisted that his sons attend public school, live within their means, and never develop the belief that they were the family's breadwinners. Rance's death became the spark that eventually led Ron and Clint to write their memoir, The Boys, published in 2021.
Clint and Ron's book is called The Boys, a memoir of Hollywood and family, and it's out now. You got to check it out, guys.
Ron later explained that when their dad passed, they began reflecting on their lives and realized that while their childhoods seemed normal, they were anything but. The book became an instant New York Times bestseller, and its most painful chapters dealt not with Hollywood politics or career setbacks, but with the struggle to save Clint from himself. Clint Howard's addiction to harmful substances and alcohol had grown so severe that Rance and John had been forced to revoke his keys to the family home in Toluca Lake because they could not trust him in his compromised state. Clint later admitted that the addiction was not caused by career disappointments. He said he simply enjoyed the substances and it came back to bite him really hard. Ron confronted Clint at Super Bowl 14, telling him it was one thing to use harmful substances and another to let harmful substances use you. Their parents attended Al-Anon and Nar-Anon meetings for years. Clint eventually found Alcoholics Anonymous, got a sponsor, and achieved lasting sobriety. He later reflected simply and powerfully, "I am so very grateful that I did not die." The losses of Andy Griffith in 2012, Don Knotts in 2006, and Happy Days creator Gary Marshall in 2016 added to the accumulation of grief. Howard called Marshall the greatest boss he ever had and said his guidance influenced the entire course of his life. Ron also discovered years after Don Knotts passed that they had actually been sixth cousins, a connection neither man knew about during Knotts' lifetime. It was a small detail, but it carried an emotional weight that surprised Ron. The man who had played Barney Fife alongside 6-year-old Opie Taylor was family all along, and they never got to share that knowledge with each other. Each loss took another piece of the foundation that had built him, and each one reminded him how fragile even the most extraordinary life can be. Ron Howard had spent his entire career telling stories about resilience, about ordinary people pushed to their limits, who somehow find a way to keep going. What most audiences never realized was that he was drawing on his own life every single time he stepped behind the camera. Still here, still proving them wrong. At 71 years old, Ron Howard is not saying goodbye. He is doing the opposite. In 2024, his documentary Jim Henson Idea Man premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, earned a 98% score on Rotten Tomatoes, received 8 Emmy nominations, and won 4 Emmys, including Outstanding Documentary and Outstanding Directing for a Documentary. His drama Eden, starring Jude Law, Ana de Armas, and Sydney Sweeney, premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival the same year. He is currently directing Alone at Dawn for Amazon MGM Studios, starring Adam Driver and Anne Hathaway. His production slate through 2027 includes over a dozen projects. In one of the most surprising developments of his career, Ron stepped back in front of the camera in 2025 for a guest role on Apple TV's The Studio, playing a heightened, satirical version of himself. He improvised a moment that became instantly iconic, throwing his Imagine Entertainment baseball cap directly at Seth Rogen's face. He told interviewers that he did not want to be cameo good. He wanted to be actually good. The role earned him his first ever acting Emmy nomination, his 14th career Emmy nomination overall, but the first one for performing. He was 71 years old and receiving his first acting nomination. On June 7, 2025, Ron and Cheryl Howard celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. To mark the occasion, they donated a bronze Victorian-style kissing bench to Johnny Carson Park in Burbank, the same park where they had dated as teenagers. The bench was valued at $88,000. Their original wedding in 1975 had cost $800. Ron posted a tribute to Cheryl on social media, describing their marriage as an adventure downriver through calm, soothing waters and some tricky rapids as well. He said their key was to love and respect each other enough to just keep paddling.
They'd only wanted me to have, I think it was 1 date a week or 2 dates a week, and I kept negotiating and pressing because I thought that was really...
He met Cheryl when they were both students at John Burroughs High School in Burbank. Their first date was November 1st, 1970. They saw a re-release of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World and ate pizza at a place called Barnone's in Toluca Lake. He reportedly proposed 3 times before she said yes, because she wanted to finish her education first. On The View, in 2024, Ron became visibly emotional talking about her. He described finding a girl who was full of life, who was flying airplanes, going to night school to get ahead, and who had authentic energy for life and joy. He paused, his voice breaking, and said she still does today. Ron and Cheryl raised 4 children. Their eldest, Bryce Dallas Howard, became a major film star and director in her own right, appearing in the Jurassic World franchise, The Help, and Rocketman, and directing episodes of The Mandalorian. But Ron had forbidden Bryce from acting as a child. She did not get her first feature film role until she was 23. Ron had lived the child actor experience himself, and he was determined to protect his daughter from the pressure and the loss of normalcy that came with it. Twins Jocelyn and Paige were born in 1985, and their son Reed, born in 1987, became a professional golfer. In 2025, Ron and Brian Grazer also celebrated the 40th anniversary of Imagine Entertainment. In a Variety interview, Howard said there has never been a time they have been on autopilot. He has speaking engagements booked into 2026, multiple films in development, and has told reporters explicitly that he is not retiring. The man who lost his hair from stress at 20, who was told no studio would ever let a sitcom actor direct, who buried both of his parents, who watched his brother nearly destroy himself, who endured a streak of box office disasters that would have sent most filmmakers into permanent exile, is still showing up to set every single day. He is still wearing the baseball cap. He is still proving that the people who underestimated him were wrong. His father Rance once told Ron and Clint something when they were young and fighting the way brothers do. He said, "You guys have a chance to have something that is really valuable. You have a chance to be brothers and love each other and be best friends for the rest of your life. Do not blow it now when you are kids." They did not blow it. And Ron Howard, at 71, has not blown a single thing that truly matters. He could have retired after the Oscar. He could have walked away after the box office failures. He could have quietly faded into the background after burying both of his parents and watching his brother nearly die from addiction. Instead, he put on the baseball cap, picked up the camera, and went back to work. That is not just persistence. That is something deeper. That is a man who understands that the only real failure is the one where you stop trying. And Ron Howard has never stopped. That is the real story of Ron Howard. Let us know in the comments which part of his journey hit you the hardest and whether you think Hollywood will ever see another career like his.